Hi, folks. It's time for GoBoldr's Shipped number 2. And this issue's focus is what is in a name. And this is kind of a funny one. This is a conversation that's come up a lot recently for three different companies I'm working with. One I'm directly involved in, one I'm tentatively involved with, and a third is one that I've been talking to a little bit to kind of help out with some consulting. Um, and it's a surprisingly important conversation, but the first part of this I want to highlight. So, number 2, what's in a name? What makes a great startup name? How should you pick one? Too long didn't read. You can listen on YouTube, which obviously you're doing now. So, picking a name for a startup, and this is really going to highlight that key, most important piece, is the most and least fun part of the process. It's equal parts just do it. And this is actually really important, as in, you don't want to get in your own way, right? As shown by my own complete newsletter rebrand just recently. I just recently changed my entire newsletter from Startup Founders Go Boulder to Shipped, which obviously is a dramatic change and I think a very positive one. But you can listen to those two names and just think like it's very clear one of them is better, right? And it's you may have a different opinion about which one is better. When you hear the two options side by side, one jumps out to you. So, in this issue, I'll cover why it's not important, why it is important, key examples that cover both of the above, and then some quick tips on how to choose your own name. Ready? Game on. So, first, your company name doesn't matter. What you call your project shouldn't hold up the project. The iterative approach should be idea, basic product, test and review, double check the idea. So it's a circular loop where you keep reinforcing every single piece along the way. That can include your branding and colors, and it can include your company name. The most important piece is just to do it. It says, with the top level goal being that you make at least one full pass from concept to outline to test and revision before settling on anything. The last thing you need is a brainstorming session with logos, colors, and branding, all taking months while nothing gets built. And that's the most important thing about this not mattering is if deciding on a name is what's holding up the whole project, just pick something and run with it. That's much worse than going to market with a ridiculous name, like GoBoldr, my own company's name. Really, confidence sells a lot of crazy, crazy names. And then the next part, the counterpoint to that is your company name is one of the most important decisions that you'll make when making your company. No pressure. Your name is the most basic level of your marketing. More so than the logo, the colors, the elevator pitch, the name is what people hopefully will remember. It'll go on graphics, promotional materials, Reddit posts, AI summaries. It should be distinct, legally, if in no other way. That's an important note. Marketable, memorable, descriptive. And descriptive can mean either it actually says what you do, like Home Depot, or that it expresses something about who you are as a company, like Beehive, the newsletter that this is written on. Or on some level, very literally says what you do, like PaveGen, which is a company that makes pressure plates that generate electricity, so they generate from pavement, PaveGen. That was a clever one. And then this is another piece here too. Your company name will fall into place. Now, the thing is, if you launch with a name that makes no sense, you can always go back and change it. The longer you run, the longer you go without changing it, the harder that is. But you should always be under the assumption that you can change it down the road, especially if that helps you move with something where otherwise you would agonize over the name for months. So here's your handy checklist for deciding on a name. Number 1, does my name work? Can you remember it? Is it something no other company or organization is using? Is it a business centered around you and what you do? You could do something like Your Name LLC, which is always a solid fallback, or Name and Name, or Name and Name are also classic co-founder team or company names. That's more common with your law agencies or your family-run businesses, but it is something that does come up, and it's always an option. And those aren't exactly inspiring. Inspiring, no, but they build off of name recognition, joint credibility, where as you become famous, your business becomes famous, and vice versa. And your name will be as memorable or not as your company name. So you're hitching your wagons together. Something that's actually an underrated point, as many companies become much more famous than their founders, and vice versa. There are a lot of individuals a lot more famous than their companies. Number 2, what are your weaknesses? Is your product niche crowded, hard to explain, or challenging to market? Each of those should drive you towards something punchier that will stand out more. If you have a ton of credibility in your space and even some market traction, you can be riskier with your name. But it's easy to discount just how much work your company name can actually do on your behalf. That's a really important point to harp on. We'll actually touch on that a little bit more later in the issue. Number three, what are your long-term goals? If the company is your name, it's going to be hard to sell to get your exit. So if you have a company that's in your name, it's not going to be terribly marketable or buyers aren't going to want it as much. Or if they do, they will be then behaving, making business decisions in a way that will reflect on your name. So be careful with that. If the company name isn't trademarkable, it's going to be tough to market. So if you go to LinkedIn and look for a company name, if you see 50 versions of that same word, it's probably time to pick something a little bit more distinctive. Something generic like Walker Industries, Walker Inc., Walker LLC, Walker and Son. There are better ways to do that. You should definitely kind of lean for a more descriptive name than that. If the company says or means, if the company name says or means something your company clearly doesn't do, like Tile World, but offering consulting services, that's going to cause a lot of confusion unless it's part of your messaging or something you plan to build towards in the future. So, for example, you want to sell boats, but you're starting out by selling rudders or tours. That's passable. You can work on that. But if it's something like self-driving cars and you do walking tours, that's not necessarily going to make sense. So you do want to take a minute to make sure that the name isn't contradictory to what you do, because that'll confuse people. It could be non-descriptive, like it could just be a name, but it shouldn't be contradictory. It should be complementary in some way to what you're doing. Shipped. I really like this one. Basic, simple, presentable. I'm very pleased with how that came out. It's a good name. Shipped logo that I chose for my newsletter and name. Okay. If you stop to think about it, you already know some great brands and branding. Just think about it. The examples are all around us everywhere. You picture like Dell. Everybody knows what Dell does, but the name has nothing to do with what the company does. It doesn't say computer in it anywhere, doesn't have anything to do with dwell time. It's a name, but it's a name brand or a household name because we are so familiar with the company. HP is another example, which is an interesting one because it's Hewlett Packard, so it is a name but goes by HP. So now it's a recognizable logo and symbol where before it was somebody's individual name. So that's a good example to bring up. I don't think that's actually in the issue. You know what works. So you can look around, go to all sorts of different company names. You can go to all of the things that you bought today and see which ones have memorable names and which ones don't. While you're thinking of which name style direction to take, consider which brands you personally like the most. I would call it an amazing company. Post Hog has a terrible product name. It says nothing about what it does or why. It's easy to skip that step or understate how important it is to stop and consider for a moment, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to do? What symbol do you want to evoke with your company name? All right, we're going to look at some concrete examples now. And this is always the light bulb moment for me, is looking at some actual brands and pulling these up. Even as somebody who's done this a lot, looking at some specific examples in the real world, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Having seen it in that context, having gotten used to this, like the Kleenex effect, right? It's not bath tissue, it's Kleenex, uh, which is pretty remarkable win, actually. So that's a great example of one where the name makes no sense. Somewhat reminiscent of clean and napkin, but then it became a household name. So concrete examples, looking at the made-up name, Google. Google's not a great name. It's an easy one. It's a completely made up word, but it reminds you of words like doggle or ooh, at least as an English speaker. And it's easy to say, it's easy to remember, and it's infinitely brandable. It neatly evolved into a verb, Googling. So if your company name is related to some sort of action and can eventually become a verb, that's actually a pretty good selling point. Or if it can become something very descriptive, like Instagram worthy or Instagrammable is another example. Um, those are good things to think of as kind of an offshoot side thought while you're creating your name. If you want it to be in that space, you want to have a name that can actually fit in that space. A lot of those were accidental, but we can look back at the past example and learn some lessons from what the company has become in ways the original founders couldn't. So that when they came up with Google, it was one of those cases where it's like, we need a name, we got to go, which is very common for founders. So don't be ashamed if that's the spot you're in. Just understand that's where you are and just be with it. It's fine. Now we can compare this to the now parent company's far less effective Alphabet, which, as I said in the newsletter, it's a name. It's a sterling example of a name that's very difficult to trademark. Alphabet was a very safe choice that really doesn't do anything except be hard to search and mess up searches for Alphabet. It's the world. And then we've got another one. So that was the made up name. And then we can look at the symbolic name. Nike is an easy example. Nike is the Greek goddess of victory, athletics, or other physical contests. An obvious choice as a short, memorable, impactful name, Nike, 2 syllables, easy, also has a deep symbolism you can explore to tell the story of who and want the company to be a typo, wanted to personify as an athletic shoe company. Man, I got to rewrite that line. I'll probably do that before this recording goes live. On the branding side, apparently the famous swoosh is meant to be a stylized symbol of the goddess Nike's wing, which is a really cool thing. Like the symbol works in with the name, which all goes together in this really neat package. Just describing that should tell you a lot about the cooler things about the symbolic name. It can be shorter and more simple than other names and have a story to tell in and of itself. So when somebody says, what does the name mean? What's in the name? Having a really robust, rich story to say about that is pretty cool. We made it up only goes so far, whereas Nike has a really good story. And there's a cautionary tale here too, because apparently the runner-up for the company name was Dimension 6. Dimension 6, which, as I said here, like Alphabet, is also a name. But Dimension 6, what does that have to do with anything? You could maybe explain it, but you shouldn't have to do that much explaining. And that reaction is exactly one of the things you want to highlight in this whole conversation. How are strangers going to react when you tell them this is your company name? Interestingly, I found out from this article that Nike's original name was Blue Ribbon Sports. So before it was Nike, it was Blue Ribbon Sports. The ribbon symbolizing the winner of a race or contest, and literally saying sports, which fits well into the next category, which is the literal name. Home Depot is an easy example here. I already referenced this earlier, but it's hard to find a better example of what we do is in the name than the literal depot of home construction supplies. It is, in fact, a depot, or near enough, and is centered largely around home construction projects. Enough said. So that's a really good one because it is Home Depot, what we do. It is what it says in the tin, and that's especially powerful for startups. If someone searches home improvement, Home Depot comfortably comes up in relevant search results, and you can see the two associated. As opposed to if you were looking for home improvement and you found like, I don't know, Shark World, that's not going to really help very much. The same as tools like Flow CV is a great one, is a small AI-powered resume writing tool for, shocker, CVs. And it was a terrific name. Flow CV is a great one. And I was actually, here's the test. In this, Flow CV is a tool that I've used to write resumes and cover letters. When I was writing this article, I remembered that name without even having to check it and look it up. And it's not a tool I've used a ton. So that was a really good test pass for Flow CV. So great example. Then we go to another one, a person's name, Lowe's. So we did Home Depot. We're going to talk about Lowe's, the competitor. Named after the original hardware store's founder, personal brand preferences aside, there are a lot of reasons that Lowe's is less effective of a name, that is, as a massive store chain. So Lowe's was an excellent name for a mom and pop hardware store that it started out as a town shop. And even then multiple chains within a region that are all close enough to remember the original source name. So Lowe's was a really good name originally. Notably, choosing the name Lowe's represents the original legacy of the company and celebrates the history and family ties of the company. Another example there is Walmart, that was named after the founder, Sam Walton. It's important to highlight that because the name itself doesn't really mean that much to most shoppers. You don't know what Lowe's means when you look it up unless you read the About Us section. And it's just not as strong of a business name for what they do as Home Depot is. There is a downside to choosing Lowe's over Home Depot if those are your two options. Do you want to be the literal one or the name one? You can see right away, even if you're not familiar with these two, which one is the more effective name for different things. But this is an important line here. The company's strength is that family, Lowe's, mom and pop legacy, and a lot of people will respond to that, knowing that the company was built on this foundational value of being a small mom and pop historical shop with a long legacy. It's part of the company's story, it's a branding and marketing angle, and possibly most importantly of all, it mattered to the people who started the company. That part, at the end of the day, and that's so here, that's a really important line to end on because your company name should matter to you. It should carry some combination of pride, function, utility, memorability, but you are the person who should feel something for the name. As the founders, the co-founders, whoever's starting this business should feel something for it. It will show if you don't, and it will show a lot if you do. Gotta fix some typos in this bad boy. So how should you do it? This is the quick tips on how you would actually choose your own company name if we were going through like a bulleted list here. Here's your consideration checklist. Number one, what does your company do? Easy one to forget. And if you don't have a good elevator pitch for what the company does, that becomes very challenging. What do you want your company to do? So, say you're going to market with an MVP, that MVP is like ticket sales, but you want to be an actual full on event marketplace that does more than that. The name could represent your ambition as much as what you're doing now. There is something to be said for both sides of that, making the name match the initial offering or making the name match the vision for what you see the company becoming. Both could be good cases. How do you want to present it? Do you want to present that ambition or do you want to really focus on the problem you're solving now? Both are totally valid approaches, unfortunately, so you have to pick one. What are your eventual goals? And that feeds back into this other too. But if you want to sell the company, you want to keep that in mind for your eventual goals. What will a name do? Somebody sees the name, what's it going to speak to them? Is it symbolic? Is it memorable? Is it cool? Is it exciting? Is it classy? Is it something that inspires confidence? Or is it something that makes people think? And what will a name keep you from doing? If you have a name that's like very much shock value, like Liquid Death, for example, that can cut you out of certain markets or investment circles immediately. Like you have to understand there are some risks for some names, but likewise, you're also not going to break into markets by being too safe. So you got to look at the markets you're looking at, got to look at who kind of is in the communities you're going to be selling to, and see if there are any lines you will not cross or lines you have to cross to stand out. Is it taken? That's a good one. And that one's at the end. And if yes, the name is taken, you start over at the top and you find a better name. I just worked on 3 company names. And here's a quick breakdown of each conversation. This was fun. For my own, GoBoldr, I love the boldness and pioneering aspect of startups. So GoBoldr was a natural choice. The combination of Go and boldness reference of Boulder is something that appeals to me, reflects my work style, and the startup innovation focus of my specialties. It's also made up. Being a misspelling of boulder and a single word, it's short, punchy, memorable, and I have a cool t-shirt logo in mind. It also works well for when I finally open that co-working space slash rock climbing gym fusion. That's something I'd love to do one day. That was a non-zero factor in settling on it. And that's one of those funny things, going back to what will your name do? What do you want your company to do? Looking at this crosses over into my passions, my hobbies, but also is very much an emotional, action oriented name. And so that was a lot of the decision making that went into choosing that. And that's something that I can carry because I have that passion and energy that goes with that name. It is my company name. I chose it for all of these foundational reasons. So I wanted to really highlight that. The second company is far more practical. It refers to exactly what it does. This is what does it do? And that's a handy one if you are have an app in the app store and you want to stand out. Somebody searches for, book. Is your app going to come up under that search term? It refers to exactly what it does. I can't share details about that one because it's still working on the name because it's very early stage. But think a digital crossover with physical books called paperback. Paperback is a great name for something relating to books. It's a digital tool, of course, but one that lovingly appreciates hard copies of written work. And we'll talk more about that soon. But so that's one of those, it does what it says on the tin, or it says what it does on the tin, something where the name is very clearly a good name, but highlights both what it does and really emphasizes the philosophy behind why and how it does what it does. So a digital thing related to like handwritten work is cool. Third, this is also an active conversation, but my personal suggestion was around symbolism, something that was short and memorable, but like Nike, highlighted the goal of the company through shared symbols. It's an easy comparison to Loblolly Creamery, which is a creamery in Little Rock, Arkansas, or founded in Little Rock, Arkansas, where we just moved from, whose founding and growth I had a front row seat to in Little Rock. The loblolly is a kind of pine tree native to the southeast United States. It's a cool, quirky word. Loblolly is very memorable and kind of rolls in the tongue. I didn't say rolls off, I said rolls on. End name that carries a lot of regional symbolism. So it was very cool. It's a really good combination of form and function, where it sounds cool, it looks cool, it is memorable once you get it right, and it also is deeply symbolic to the region. It was a great name, very much like Nike was. Regional symbolism, emphasizing the locally crafted, so it has that local root aspect to it, and community roots. See what I did there? I made the joke for myself twice that of the company, while adding creamery is a pretty solid way to tell people what the business does. Really good one. Throwing places like Loblolly Creamery, local roots, handcrafted roots, deep roots, cool sounding name. Creamery does what it says in the tin. That's a nice fusion one because the name says both things. There's the symbolic and the literal all in one. Great example. And it's very similar to what the third company is going to end up choosing for a name. Yeah, all three of these examples share a combination of broadcasting intent. Their varying degrees of quirky and literal, combining uniqueness, symbolism, and a does what it says on the tin level of passive marketing. If someone sees your name on a sign, a business card, or a bumper sticker, just your name, it's excellent free marketing. If the viewer can read it, which is an underrated point, remember it, and have just enough of an idea of what it means to know that they want to dig further or think of someone right away who would. Like that 6-year-old in the backseat who's begging for ice cream when you go by Loblolly. Yup. For a founder of the week, we'll get Eli Stepziak. Spizak. I am so sorry, Eli. I know I'm going to get your name wrong, but Eli Eli, the co-founder of the Chrome extension Pretty Prompt. I've been tremendously fortunate, and let's go ahead and yeah, we'll keep up here, to meet with a lot of truly extraordinary founders across all sorts of industries, and that's one of the best things about working with startups. The founder-led growth is one of my favorite things to witness. Eli is, I think, the strongest example of a founder-led company growth that I've seen yet. Seriously, check out his LinkedIn presence. It's good. You should check that link. Punchy but clever, technical but digestible, excited, energetic, always working and highlighting the humanity of the product, the what, the why, and publicly talking through what they're learning and doing every day. Eli is non-technical. He's not a technical founder. He is doing some of the product development coding work, mostly because he's also talking to customers and users every day. He is everywhere. He's talking to people, he's doing promo bits, he's doing news spots, and he's building the product. And he's posting about this publicly on LinkedIn. You can follow the whole journey there. And his content is very good. What Pretty Prompt, this company, does is act as an in-browser prompt engineer for AI tools. You tell it, I want to make an app that does this in this tool. So I want to make a lovable app that's a sleep tracker for, my grandma. And it crafts a highly detailed prompt to guide whatever tool you're using to do exactly that. It's one fewer step between concept and execution, but catches things that most tools miss unless explicitly told, like to make sure the database is secure, to make sure the entire app uses the same code language, or to make sure XYZ interface tool is available for users. It's a really cool tool. I've really loved using Pretty Prompt and seeing it grow as a company. Like it's very clever. We're not all prompt engineers, and in many cases, we just don't know what we don't know. And if you're making an app, there are a lot of common mistakes to make. It's like in Pretty Prompt, you could say, I want to make a browser extension. It will write you a different program than it would if you say, I want to make an app. Now, you do have to know that you want a browser extension versus an app, and you can talk to it a little bit to learn that. But even that level of technical different direction is important to know, and Pretty Prompt can help you get there. Pretty Prompt is one more layer that gets you that much closer to actually doing what you've been dreaming about, but making those first steps that much easier. It's a cool tool. Bonus, by reviewing the prompts it suggests, you can learn a lot about each different AI platform. Like if you're doing a Claude research paper and you tell Pretty Prompt, I want a sparring partner who's going to help me think through this like analysis of redwood tree pollination. It will craft an actual conversational tool, like a conversational persona that you can then plug into Claude in a lot more detail than you could have done. It's faster, it's cleaner, and it will do a lot of things you didn't necessarily think to do because it is a built-in prompt engineer. And you can learn a lot about the reading what it would craft for that. You can then tweak and adjust it if you have a different project. Say your research changes to pinecone pollination instead of redwoods. You can then change some of the key details, but keep the core of that, and you'll still have something that's reusable. Double bonus, it's a Chrome extension, something that just lives in the top of your browser, so it's always there, just a click away if you need it in the window you're using. It's cool. Eli and his co-founder Charlie Day are an amazing duo building something very practical and deceptively simple. Great product, a great team, great product, amazing founding team. Those guys are cool. Host of the week, startup recruiter Zahara Sakuras gives a very good startup recruiting advice dressed up in absolute sass, satire, and sarcasm. I'm not going to spoil that. You should definitely click on that. The post is phenomenal. Who says good advice can't be funny? Our news tidbit of the week is that OpenAI has filed for an initial public offering for going public and selling stock publicly in the market. But so they're waiting on federal review to prove whether or not they can go public as a company, but they haven't shared a timeline. They haven't said when or if they're going to do it. They just now are able to build up a lot of investors are watching that one. Until next time, come find me on LinkedIn. And of course, you can find this on YouTube where you are now if you're listening to this. And that's it. Hopefully you enjoy this issue. See you for the next one. Cheers.